We are in unprecedented times of human existence. There is an infinite supply of things to consume. Just endless and endless and endless things. If no one made another piece of content starting today, there would be thousands of years worth of content that it would take for you to watch to get through. The supply and demand curve of life is all the way fucked up. There's an infinite supply of things to consume, and there's a high demand for things to consume. But there's levels to what's being made, right? There's infinite brain rot content and hot girls to look at and movies to watch. And they're entertaining, but mostly garbage. But I think where a lot of us go wrong is there's also a super high demand for deep, insightful, meaningful content that's fulfilling and fulfilling things to live around. It seems that's not true. I guess a good example with that is you would say everyone's tired of these podcasts, dating podcasts about women and 50-50 and and things like that, right? There's infinite supply of that. And people complain about it. But if you really looked in the depths of content, there's a ton of videos with 50 views where people are speaking philosophy and talking about their life experience and such that just get ignored. I'm going to get back to that. But there is an ultra high demand for meaningful content. We just ignore it. And that's the problem with our brains, right? The problem is choice. We get in our own way from what we truly, deeply, deeply, deeply would make us fulfilled for the low hanging fruit of entertainment. But me as well, right? How are you going to sit there and listen to someone that you've never met speak without interesting edits and all these things when you could just scroll down and there's a super hot girl, the most beautiful girl that you've never seen a girl this beautiful in real life that you can see endlessly on the internet. Then the next video is LeBron dunking somebody, and then the next one's some funny prank video, and then the next one is your favorite car that you'll never get because you can't afford it, and so on and so forth. Endless things that are just your brain you just have to watch it, right? You just have to look at it. But once you turn the phone off, you forget about it and you're not even really, you're not very fulfilled from that piece of content. But you just have to look at it. So the problem is choice. Deep down, we all are craving a meaningful existence. No one likes to say that online, and no one likes to spill out the void in their heart of the lack of meaning in what they're doing in their life. They go to their job at Subway, you go to your job at Amazon, and then you get home, and then you got this endless content to consume that sedates you or entertains you or distracts you from the fact that you're not living a fulfilling life. Yet everything that you could want is out there. Or it, if you felt like it wasn't, which is untrue because it is out there, you could make your own. The problem with making your own is that nobody's going to give a fuck because of the problem I just laid out. You're going to make deep, insightful art or content or philosophy or something, and no one's going to give a fuck about it. And it's going to be hard to continue to do because it hurts. It hurts to make videos spilling your heart out and to put forth what's fulfilling to you, to the world, just for it to be ignored and overlooked by brain rot content and hot girls. Side note, don't be upset at the way the world works. That's just how it is. The same thing that you're complaining about that is hurting your experience, you indulge in. You look at those hot girls. You watch LeBron dunking on people. You brain rot scroll on TikTok and Instagram. So it's an interesting hypocrisy that we all face, that our brains are being hijacked almost scientifically by content creators and movies and all these things. But ultimately, it does come back to choice. I think the way that you can continue to put forth meaning is by understanding that nobody is going to give a fuck about your thing in the beginning. Why would anyone watch this video? No one really knows who I am. No one knows my credentials. No one knows why they should listen to me. Why not just look at LeBron dunk on somebody? But I've studied the greats, studied people like Jay-Z, Nipsey Hussles, Damon Johns, Gary V's, and these people. And I've noticed a trend in their come up. They start with something low-key and not public, right? Gary Vee, they run a wine business. Jay-Z, he was in the streets selling drugs. And not that I would know about that, but that's a tough, miserable existence, no matter what movie you watch, or what you consume, or what your friend tells you about it, or what you see from some politicians saying these are evil people and stuff like that. It's a miserable existence that is painful. And honestly, if you take all the moral and ethics the the product that's being sold and all that stuff, you would have a deep respect for people that have gone through that. Not that I would know, but it's something worthy of respect in a certain manner. And I use selling drugs as an example, but there's unlimited different examples of that. There's a mechanic that's just worked minimum wage in the shop, working on cars for 10 years before anything good happened, before they got their own shop, before they became renowned in the field. Same with all the other industries. So they do that. They go through their 5. The time is shortened because of the internet, but 3, 5, 10 years of just grinding it out, just doing the fulfilling work with no attention, no notoriety. Sometimes they have little pockets of documentation along the way, a little video here, a piece of content there. But for the most part, they're low key, off the radar, just handling their craft, grinding it through the mud while nobody gives a fuck. And then even when you start to put it out there, nobody gives a fuck. Because they're looking at LeBron dunking on people and that hot girl. Understandably so. But if you understood that, if you understood the route of becoming that person, you would understand why I'm making this video. I know nobody gives a fuck about this video. I could hijack and make this more interesting and use cool edits and talk about more interesting things and have an opening hook and do all these things to grab your attention. And there's great use for that. And you can kind of combine the two together. But ultimately, what I've noticed about the greats is they create a backlog of them spilling their heart out in the beginning of their content creation. Look at Jay-Z, Reasonable Doubt. One of the greatest albums of all time, but it doesn't get much. It doesn't get nearly as much credit. People are going to listen to Sexy Red and Meg Thee Stallion and drill rappers and King Von and this. King Von's a little bit different, but they make that, and then they learn what grabs people's attention, and then they get the attention that brings people back to their high-filling content based on their credibility. Reasonable Doubt's almost 30 years old, and I listen to it all the time, and there's a lot of things like that. But now, I was watching this series the other day, Day Zero or whatever, with De Niro. And it was entertaining, but it didn't fulfill anything to me. And I feel like so much of the content and things that are out now are so tailored for algorithms and grabbing attention that we're losing the meaning and fulfillment around things. And don't get me wrong, I'm a businessman and it's very important to be able to garner the attention, but it's very hard to put that attention to use because it's a race to the bottom for just more and more and more high dopamine things to grab people's attention. Imagine if you ran the most extravagant spectacle of all time, brought people to your store, but what was in your store was some crusty ass store and some fucking a piece of poop. It would ruin your name, and all the fulfillment and all the meaning, everything behind it would just be destroyed. So I think everyone has to go through the phase of spilling their heart out and making content or creating whatever they create that no one will give a fuck about. And then you later have to use those spectacles and forms of attention to bring to what's meaningful. But it's so hard now because of the endless supply of the bullshit. So, what does this mean? Oh, my cigar went out. What does this mean? It means a couple things. It means deep, meaningful, insightful content has the highest demand of all time. But it feels near impossible to break through because of the amount of time and energy and pain and suffering it takes to get there, to get people there. But I think if you look past that and you look into the future, and if you knew, okay, in 10 years, someone will watch this video. In 10 years, someone will care about this. In 10 years, it will matter. That will help you push through and actually accomplish what you want to accomplish in a meaningful way. Something I like to think about is like almost like a biography of my life in real time. If I if I were to pass away and I wanted to raise my kids based off my videos or what content I put in the world, what would it be? And if you think about that, it'll give you endless motivation and fulfillment and power in what you're creating and what you're putting out in the world, and divert you away from doing things and spectacles that would demean yourself or that you wouldn't exactly be proud of.